good afternoon. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. Today, I'm very pleased and thrilled to have as my guest Dana Griffin, who's the CEO, co-founder of Eldara. Dana, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, Dana, I want to first begin by saying, we ran into each other at the Battery, no less. And when you described your idea in 30 seconds, the classic elevator pitch, I just love the idea of connecting someone who is young with someone that is old. I think it's a fantastic idea. It's something that is completely unappreciated in our society today. So tell me a little bit about, the genesis of, how you even came up with this rather unconventional idea.
So this idea is really not new. I think the genesis of it is probably as old as I am, candidly. So I'm a direct result of the kindness and caring of older adults. I was raised by my grandparents in Transylvania and Romania, and then I was cared for by older adults ever since then. To this point, I still have about a third of my friends are between 60s and 90s. And I know who to go to for advice on building a company, on real estate, on healthcare, on love. And I don't know how I would navigate life without them. So in 2017, my closest elder mentor and mother figure in New York, her name was Linda, got diagnosed with brain cancer and ended up passing away 4 months later. And when that happened, I realized that, everything I've done before was almost preparing me for the opportunity to build potentially a landscape or an ecosystem that allows other people to have the type of relationship that Linda and I had, because that relationship was incredibly beneficial to both of us. And I started by looking at this incredible resource that we have globally. There's 1 billion people over 60 in the world today. And they are massively underutilized. So I looked at how can we use technology to unlock this time and wisdom in them and put it to use towards social good. And the lowest direct connection was to kids, because that's what I experienced. That's what I grew up with. So I started Eldara in its earliest form in 2018, looking at how can we use AI to recognize human wisdom, because if we can recognize it, we can unlock it and give it to someone else. And we started formulating the idea of codifying this human wisdom, kind of like we sequenced the genome. And we were having so much fun being very, very nerdy with every human wisdom study. And then COVID happened in 2020, and we realized, the theory is great, but people need each other today. Young and old need to come together today. So 4 days after school closed in New York, we pivoted Eldara into creating this face-to-face connection between young and old. And by March 30th of 2020, so 2 weeks later, we had our first Eldara call. And it was between Jackie, who is an incredible 82-year-old lady in Colorado, and this little girl in Brooklyn. And, we had no idea what to expect. I stayed on the Zoom with them to see what's going to happen. And they ended up talking. Jackie shared 2 stories. She's a storyteller. And then the little girl reciprocated by sharing her own story. And then they decided to speak again next week. And we were shocked. That was the beginning of Eldara.
Interesting. So basically, the pandemic, in a way, basically gave you the idea for this thing, because that's not what you were pursuing before the pandemic. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. When the pandemic started, we really pivoted from a very theoretical form to how can we help make people's days better today. And that was really the impetus to what Eldara is today. So it was such a hard time on everyone, including me.
Yeah, right. So now normally, you sort of think normally as kids, like they would think they would feel, my perception is that kids feel, or younger people feel like, well, old people, they're not in their generation, they're old fashioned, they're out of touch with today's modern society. So you normally think of somebody who's older, a generation or two generations, as being out of touch and that you can't relate to. But what is it where's that wrong?
So there are huge myths around this that I'm very excited to break. And I'm excited to break them candidly because I want to grow old in a world where I matter. Mm-hmm. And when we look at aging today, it's really, really interesting how we live longer than ever before, yet we hate aging. Mm-hmm. Why? If you're lucky enough, you're going to grow old. The only alternative is you die young, which none of us really want, do we?
Right.
So we realized that older adults are fabulous and brilliant. But more than that, they're incredibly needed by the younger generation. So we're dealing with a few myths. For instance, that older adults are not into technology. Interestingly, about 30 million people over 60 in the US today use Zoom. It's just that technology has evolved in a way that is now allowing us to communicate more naturally. Now, if you ask them if they're into technology, they will say no. But if you ask them if they use Zoom, they say yes. So that brings us to kids. Younger generation today has a mental health crisis we've never seen before. At the same time, the older generation has a loneliness crisis we've never seen before. I believe those two are a direct result of the segregation of the ages, of the fact that young and old are no longer socialized together. As a society, we evolved with the old and young taking care of each other while the middle generation went out to work and work the fields and hunt and gather. Right. And now we lost that connection, which is causing huge healthcare problems in two major populations. But what does this actually mean for kids? Kids are so disconnected for society, unfortunately, and they're so connected to this that they crave human attention. So let me give you a few stats that we see at Eldara. Yeah. So at Eldara, parents sign up their kids between 5 and 18. And kids 5 to 12 talk to their mentors weekly, on average 47 minutes a week. Kids 13 to 18, their average is 90 minutes a week. They go as high as 120.
Wow.
They have a need to talk to each other. Moreover, people assume that it's a one-way conversation, that the older adult would be teaching the kids something. We don't see that at all. We see it completely crossing over. Everyone's teaching everyone. I'll give an example. Mentors at Eldara are between 60s and 96. So 60 and 96. They know how to hack Zoom better than me now because the kids teach them. Because when the kids want to play a game or use filters or be funny, they show the older adults how to do it. Another very interesting myth that we hear, and it's been propagated by the media too. We talk a lot about the loneliness in the older population. And it's true. Older adults are lonely. And they're dealing with the health backdraws of that loneliness. I think Medicare today spends $6.7 billion a year only dealing with loneliness in older adults. But what's not that talked about and has been researched is that the young generation is actually lonelier than the older generation. And when they are lonely, they have not yet developed the coping mechanisms to deal with that. So in essence, they're really helping each other. And the kids know it. I'll tell you a third thing. 94% of the mentors and mentees, because that's how we call them, when they talk once, they go on to talking weekly. 72% still talk weekly a year later. And it's never the kids or the parents who end the mentoring cycle. So yeah, we're seeing just incredible need on both sides, but in particular with kids.
Now, are you saying there's a difference between, because I mean, obviously kids have older siblings, they have their own parents, which are older, but you're saying that that's not quite the same thing as going to the next generation, or what?
Exactly. Yes. So Absolutely. Going to the next generation, to the older generation, in particular, a non-related older adult. There's a lot of research around this conducted by Harvard University Center for Childhood Development that says that building a trusting relationship with a non-parental adult drives resilience in kids. And what we see actually at Eldara is it's almost the opposite of social media. So we developed an algorithm on how to put young and old together to create these strong long-term bonds, because we know these bonds drive health outcomes on both sides. And one of the key indicators, and I'm not going to go through everything, there are about 200 variables we use, but one of the key variables is differences. The more different they are, the stronger their bond is. So as opposed to social media, where kids are trying to conform to a norm and to be part of a group and fit in, on their Eldara conversations and the one-on-one conversations with older adults, frankly, Eldara or otherwise, they come from different generations, different geographies, different cultures. Many times we do have a global population of kids, and they are so different that it allows them to feel unique and feel special and feel curious about the other person. So they ask questions like, how did you grow up? And what games did you play when you grew up? And what did you get in trouble with your parents with when you grew up? And that in turn clicks something clicks in the older adult's brain when they start feeling like a child again. Like they start remembering like, oh, I used to get in so much trouble with my mom for like being late to school or something like that. And they bond over both differences and similarities.
Interesting. Well, it's so interesting because when I met you and you described this idea and what you're trying to do, I think I told you the story, but I had my first experience with this myself because I had actually interviewed as my guest a guy named Gary Bowles, who's like a life coach, and he's, in his late 60s or something like that. And when I was describing to him my daughter, he said, oh, I'd be happy to, meet with your daughter or whatever. And my daughter's 19. And I immediately thought, well, first of all, I can't imagine you'd want to talk to someone who's 19 years old and she's dropping out of high school or whatever. It seemed very unlikely. But he said he was really glad to do it. He insists on doing it. But then I thought, well, my daughter's not going to be interested in talking to somebody who's, she's young. And, I just thought it'd be the unlikeliness of meetings. And they met. And my daughter says, I had a great time with Gary. And now they email each other. And I was just like really surprised to hear this. And so when I met you, I was like, wow, maybe there is a kernel of truth. I mean, I never thought that they would hit it off, somebody who's at the end of their, late in their career and somebody who's, not even starting.
I'm so glad that you shared that story, because I think that's another myth that's out there. It's propagated. Frankly, I think it started with the idea of retirement, where people would retire at 65. Candidly, at that point, they would die at 68 and they would be sent off to live their golden years.
Right.
And kids are no longer used to growing up around older adults, but they feel safe and they feel seen with older adults. And that is thanks to curiosity on both sides. In fact, I'll tell you, with the help of our community, and everything we build is with the help of our community, they are directly involved in everything from product to rollout. We identified 4 core values for Eldara that comes from them. Is generosity. So everyone comes at Eldara because they have something to give. So your daughter probably had curiosity to give and a fresh perspective. Your friend, Gary, had wisdom and time to give. And those are really, really big assets. And together they were looking to make an impact, and you probably assume that if Gary talked to your daughter, then it would have an impact on her. However, I'm willing to bet that conversation had as much impact on Gary, if not more, as it had on your daughter. And that impact will be long lasting throughout their lives. And so generosity, curiosity, impact, and gratitude.
Interesting.
I'm sure you've noticed that they're grateful for each other's for each other's time and just connection. And those 4 core values replicate in every single intergenerational Eldara relationship that we have.
Well, it is interesting because when you think about it, I mean, the older generation and the younger generation, I mean, they're the 2 generations that do have time, right? The middle generation, the working adults, I mean, they're so busy, they're trying to struggle with life, and they've got jobs and they're taking care of their kids, whatever, and they don't have this time. But when you're retired in your 60s, you have a lot of time. So it does kind of make sense.
Yeah, and there's one more thing is that people, as they retire, and I really believe and I really hope that by the time I get old, we're going to do away with this idea of retirement, because it's candidly not good for anyone. It has really bad health outcomes. But the one thing that people look for is purpose. And there's my friend Eric Kim ran the most incredible research on older adults following their purpose. And it's something like when you follow your purpose as an older adult, you decrease and delay cardiac episodes just tremendously, to the point where now payers, insurance companies are signing up and are encouraging their members to do activities that follow their purpose. Now, going a step further, when that activity is intergenerational, this new, it's not new. There's this very old human reaction that was named by Dean Linda Fried as generativity. So generativity is when an older person genuinely needs to make a younger person's lives better. And when she looked at cognitive well-being and just overall well-being, when older adults volunteered in general, which is already great for them, versus volunteered with younger adults. They had 3 times the health benefits with intergenerational volunteering than just with volunteering in general. So there's a lot of research around the benefits on both sides. And in fact, we partnered with Columbia University now to conduct research on the health outcomes of Eldara on both of the sides on both kids in terms of resilience and social emotional learning, and older adults in terms of cognitive well-being and loneliness.
So how are you tell me a little bit, now let's talk about the business a little bit. How are you getting the word out? How is it just word of mouth? How are you, and how many people have signed up for this wonderful service?
So we have been in stealth mode really for the past 2.5 years. Everyone who signed up was completely word of mouth. Okay. Now, we have been fortunate that we've gotten some really good press. Truthfully, you can't be part of Eldara and not feel the joy that happens here. Yeah. We've done read up in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Atlantic, Time, ARP, USA Today, you name it. And that's how we've grown so far. People just sign up on our website. Everyone's welcome to. There are a few criteria. If you want to sign up as a mentor, you have to be at least 60 years old. You have to pass a criminal background check. You have to have an internet accessible device that can access Zoom. And very importantly, you have to have a kind heart and a curious mind. So those are the requirements on the older adult side. Now, in the past few months, we got confirmation that we hit product market fit. And now we're excited to be rolling out with partners. On the older adult side, we're partnering with payers that mainly on the Medicare Supplemental, Medicare Advantage sides, because we know that Eldara helps with healthy aging. ARP quoted that we help with healthy aging. And on the kids side, we started partnering with school boards. So we are rolling out our first partnership with Miami-Dade School Board. Wow. We're very excited. They approved Eldara as an after-school program for social emotional learning. And here's the amazing thing, which they came up with, and I'm so grateful. Every high schooler that signs up for Eldara, for every Eldara hour, they get a community service hour. And I didn't know this, but high schoolers need to complete, I believe, 100 community service hours a year. So especially we're learning a lot about communities around the United States, but Miami-Dade is the third largest school board in the country, and they have a very large population of students that when school ends, they have to get on the bus and go home. They don't have any other mode of transportation, which means that they don't get to take part in a lot of the after-school activities offered. So Eldara is now a solution for them where they can be part of something bigger, connect with someone, get community service hours from their own homes. So we're very, very excited. And just today we found out that we are in the process with the New York City School Board.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So up to this point, have you had trouble finding more older people or more trouble getting kids to sign up? I'm just kind of curious where the balance is.
You know what? It's kind of up and down on both sides. So they have different paths, is what we've learned. So when the older adults sign up, they love it, and then they bring in their best friend. And it's a little bit of a one-to-one. Alternatively, they read about it in the Washington Post, on ARP, and then they sign up that way. When parents sign up their kids, they can see the difference in the kids. They tell us that. They can see the confidence go up, grades go up. We do not understand yet why grades go up because we don't do any academic work. But then they start telling the other parents. And they tell parent groups, and then they post about us on social platforms, not just in the US, globally. We have kids today, parents sign up kids today from 27 different countries. We have quite a large population of postdocs that are all over the world who have kids and who just intrinsically understand they're giving their kids a leg up.
Interesting.
So that's kind of how we've grown so far. But now we are growing through partnerships. We're really scaling the solution.
So let me ask you this. But you don't get any resistance from the parents thinking, well, why isn't my kid talking to me? Or why isn't my kid talking to their own grandparents? Like that doesn't come up. I would think there'd be a little bit of bias. Like, why are you talking to you know what I'm saying? Like that does not come up. Or does it?
You know what the parents tell us. So we ask the parents.
Yeah.
Every single parent who signs up, we ask them, what's your dream experience? You know, what are you hoping your kid will get out of this?
Yeah.
And we hear something very different. We hear that I want my kid to have a different perspective on life. I want my kid to have a grandparent figure, especially if they don't have a grandparent figure around or accessible. You know? We do have kids from single family homes. They say, you know, I want my kid to have kind of like a father-grandfather figure, you know? Sometimes they say, you know, I'm very busy. I have 4 kids. I want my kid to get special attention from somebody, you know? So those are the main reasons. And then there is a 5th reason, which we kind of love. Because we have so many international kids, sometimes the parents are like, I want my kid to be better at speaking English. And you know,
that's okay
all
too.
of it is acceptable.
All's good.
You know, they're all great reasons. So those are the reasons that we see. What we hear from parents after they become part of Eldara is that they notice that the relationship between mentor and mentee at Eldara, and I'll tell you the story behind those names, is very different than the grandparent relationship, because the grandparent is associated to the parent, while the Eldara mentor is their friend. You know, and it's just this beautiful interaction they have. Go ahead.
So do you get direct feedback? Okay, so you obviously get feedback from the parents. How about from the feedback? Do you get direct feedback from the kids? And what kind of feedback do the kids tell you?
Oh my goodness. I'm smiling because every time we get feedback from the kids, I cry.
Yeah.
The first direct and very public feedback we got was we got a young 10-year-old journalist named Nora who signed up undercover for Eldara and then published about it in Time magazine. And she wrote about her full experience, and she ended her write-up by saying Eldara was like an escape from quarantine for me. So I started crying. But then kids talk about their Eldara bond. They say that, I'm trying to paraphrase Bella, a 9-year-old little girl, said that her Eldara bond it's good to learn how to form a bond, because that's one of the most important relationships you can have. And then it's good to know how to have a friend and have fun and talk about big things and be silly and not get mad. And I was dying laughing at that. But then we have kids who refer to their mentors as grandpa and grandma and aunt and uncle. And it creates this bond between them that is just nothing I imagine. I mean, if you would have told me this is going to be the outcome of Eldara, I would have pinched myself.
Yeah.
What we see today is just above and beyond anything I imagine.
Now, how about switching to the older generation? Do they ever say, "Oh, this is silly," or the kid like is this dumb, or like, do you ever get any? Is that ever a reaction, or that this is wasting my time, or anything like that?
So we never, frankly, get that this is wasting my time. This is silly.
Yeah.
You have to remember that people self-select to sign for Eldara.
Yeah.
They do say this is silly with the biggest grin on their face, and using like a Zoom filter with a hat or something. And they invent games, and they play games. And I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. So one of the Eldara games that everyone loves is that both the mentor and the kid have to bring a bag with 3 of their favorite things in the bag, and then they have to like tell each other about what's in the bag. And one of the mentors wrote us, because we created a private platform for just the mentors, so they can talk to each other and to us all the time and help each other be better mentors. So they wrote, one of our mentors, Jen, said, I tried this out on Thursday. It was fabulous. The 3rd thing that came out of my mentee's bag was her hamster Dumbo. So the rule is you never know what's going to come out of the bag. We have another mentor and mentee who play virtual baseball on Zoom. So the mentor throws the ball and the mentee catches it, and they coordinate how they do it on the screen, and they're giggling like crazy. And then they talk about World War II, because the kid is super into World War II, and who better to talk to than a retired university professor, who was also super into World War II. So, yes, they say it's silly and they love it.
They love it.
Yeah.
Do you have, on the kids side, I'm also curious, like, do you find there's some differences between, teen mentees and then the younger preteen mentees? I mean, now with the iPhone and everything, you read about kids having very little attention span. Are you struggling with that at all as an issue?
Huge differences between preteen and teen. Absolutely. This is really weird. One of our parents, Margaret, said that Eldara was the screen time she was okay with. So interestingly, kids are used to interacting on the screen.
Yes.
So they feel comfortable and safe. And there's a lot of safety we built into the technology in general. But interacting with someone on a screen that is so excited to see them and can't wait to hear what happened at school and what are the latest stories and what are they into, is something that they're not used to. Parents are generally about my age, and they're very busy.
Yeah, right.
So they sometimes, unfortunately, don't have time to hear everything and get every story. And when they do, they also, ask the really key things like, how are your grades? Did you do your homework? Eldara mentors don't really ask that. They ask like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we feeling this week? What are we most grateful about? And they kind of develop this new socializing, like social emotional learning skills, in essence, that are different from their day to day. That being said, I mentioned this before. Teenagers talk to their mentors twice as much than preteens do.
Interesting. Well, Dana, you must really feel like you just stumbled onto something almost magical. I mean, you leveraged off your personal life experience, which of course you have no control over, and you just turned it in. It just seems. I mean, doesn't that seem amazing to you? At least when I hear the story, it sounds amazing to me. I mean, is that what it feels like to you?
It really does. I have to tell you, I pinch myself every day.
Yeah.
I and my team, I have an incredible, small, and just incredibly talented and mission-oriented team. And we start our day off every morning by reading feedback. So we ask both mentors and parents to give us feedback after the first session and every 10 sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ask them to copy us on really all the gratitude between them. So we start every day with reading how Eldara changed their lives. They literally tell us that. Eldara is the best thing, best time of my week. Eldara changed my life. Eldara changed my kid's life. My kid is now one of the kids, together with the mentor came up with this idea that the kid should publish a book. The kid was 11. I kid you not. The mentor was like, listen to me, boy. You are smart. You have something to say. I've written 7 books. Super easy. We can publish it for free. I'll teach you how. Let's write a book. They did. They published a book. It's on sale on Amazon. Promo. It's called Beautiful Theorems That Changed Math by Hyun-Sung Lee. And I encourage all of your listeners to buy it because all of the proceeds are going to the Pediatric Cancer Society.
Wow.
And they're already working on their next project. So, so those are the types of things that we wake up to every day. So I'm never doing anything else for the rest of my life.
I can totally.
Yeah.
Do you vision this at all somehow? And not that this isn't great already, but do you vision like a role for this in the corporate world too? Like you've got young employees who are just college graduates, men being menteed by, executives that are retired. I mean, do you see this in a corporate kind of application at all?
So the intergenerational concept must live in a corporate application. BMW did research in Germany where they put together a young and an older employee. Both productivity and efficiency went up and retention went up as well. And that's just one of many examples. I believe that intergenerational relationships and the idea of tapping into older adults as a resource needs to pervade our society. In fact, Dean Linda Fried of Columbia University, she's the dean of the Millman School of Public Health. She recently published under the Academy of Medicine, Healthy Longevity Report. She published her vision of a age-integrated society by 2050, where she depicts what a society would look like, how both health, economic welfare, climate, and education would go up by keeping older adults integrated in society as long as possible. So I absolutely believe that. That being said, Eldara stands for the era of the elders. Our mission is to unlock the time and wisdom of older adults as a new natural resource. Our first application is kids, and it's going great. I definitely see further applications of the wisdom and the social capital of older adults. And in fact, under Dean Fried's guidance, I'm starting a movement to start encouraging these applications called GOLD, with G in parentheses. So old puts the social capital in gold.
Oh, I like it. Interesting. You almost wonder whether evolution has almost played a role in this. And if you think about the importance of the intergeneration, if you think of the importance of the next generation to that other generation, maybe evolution played a role. Like that's the reason that we live to survive, so that we can actually have a role with that next generation, right? Otherwise, if it was completely useless, we would only need to live to the generation of reproduction, and then that's it.
Absolutely. I mean, there are very few species out there where the grandparents or the older generations are involved. And we are one of them.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt. In fact, this was normal in human society until about 100 years ago or so. We didn't invent anything new. What we created was a platform, tools, resources, and the safety to allow for this intergenerational connection to happen regardless of your geography or mobility. Because if you look in bigger cities, there are intergenerational programs. And we think the world of them, and they're localized, and older adults get to volunteer in schools, and please do. But the truth is, the majority of both older adults and kids don't live in regions where that is available. For them, but they do have internet. So for them, Eldara is a solution. About a quarter of our older adult community at Eldara is not mobile. But they're brilliant and they have time on their hands. And they know how to use, and they are making an impact on kids' lives that they would have never otherwise met. That is what Eldara stands for.
I also like this because for all the bad things that social media has created and technology and stuff like that, this is one really amazing thing. I mean, technology has totally made this possible. If it weren't for that, you could not connect that older and younger generation. I mean, it'd be so hard, virtually impossible. But with Zoom, it really does make it possible.
It is. And there's a lot that goes into the platform, and into how we support mentors and kids. But we believe that technology, has to be used in a way that allows us to be more human. And this is one way. And I think each and every one of us has a responsibility to build technology that promotes and serves humanity, and that is part of one of our core principles. Our technology is never going to interrupt humanity or connection. It's meant to be additive to everyday life, and we're dedicated to that. We're also never going to advertise on our platform or sell data. We are a group of really passionate misfits who believe in the beauty that technology can bring in the world.
Well, Dana, it's been so wonderful chatting with you. And I love hearing about the story. I love hearing the stories that you've encountered. It was just a thrill, and I really enjoyed and appreciate your taking this time.
Thank you so much. It was an honor, and I look forward to seeing you around.
This is Richard Hsu and Dana Griffin. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.